The shadows of the Carpathians in the remote Carpathian mountains of Romania, nestled deep within the folds of mist-covered peaks, lay the small village of Velini. Time seemed to have stopped here, where ancient traditions and superstitions shaped the lives of its inhabitants. The villagers spoke in hushed tones of a legend that had haunted their ancestors for centuries, the tale of the nocturnal wanderer, Vladimir the Eternal. Vladimir was said to be a vampire, a creature bound by an insatiable hunger and a dark curse. His story began long ago, when he was a nobleman of great renown, admired and envied alike. His life was one of splendor until a series of inexplicable deaths among his peers began to tarnish his reputation. Whispers of dark rituals and unholy bargains spread through the land, and soon, Vladimir was accused of being a vampire. He was cast out and doomed to wander the Carpathians for all eternity, his soul forever trapped in the shadowy realm between life and death. The legend said that Vladimir could be identified by his pallid complexion, eyes that burned like embers in the dark, and an eerie silence that seemed to follow him like a shroud. Despite the fear surrounding Vladimir, the villagers of Velini continued to live their lives, carefully observing ancient customs to protect themselves from the vampire's influence. They would place garlic around their homes, wear crosses, and avoid going out after dusk. Yet, these measures were not always enough to keep the dark at bay. One foggy autumn evening, a young scholar named Elena arrived in Velini. Driven by curiosity and a thirst for knowledge, she sought to uncover the truth behind the legend of Vladimir. Armed with old manuscripts and a journal of her own, Elena began her investigation. She spoke to the villagers, each of whom had their own version of the tale. They all warned her to be careful, but their warnings only fueled her determination. Elena's research led her to the abandoned estate where Vladimir was said to have lived. The mansion stood in eerie silence, its walls covered in ivy and decay. As she explored the crumbling halls and darkened rooms, she felt an inexplicable chill in the air, as if the very essence of the estate was alive with the remnants of its former occupant. In a hidden chamber beneath the mansion, Elena discovered an ancient diary. Its pages were filled with cryptic symbols and descriptions of rituals. One entry, written in a shaky hand, mentioned a secret room that held the key to Vladimir's curse. The entry was cut off abruptly, leaving Elena with a tantalizing mystery. As Elena pieced together the diary's clues, she began to notice strange occurrences. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and she could hear faint whispers in the darkness. One night, she was awakened by a chilling presence in her room, her breath visible in the cold air. She turned to find a figure standing at the foot of her bed, a man with burning eyes and a face that seemed to be both familiar and alien. The figure vanished before Elena could react, leaving her heart pounding and her mind racing. Determined to solve the mystery, she continued her search, only to find that the village's attitude towards her was growing colder. The villagers seemed more distant, their eyes darting nervously whenever she approached. Elena's investigation revealed that the secret room mentioned in the diary was buried deep beneath the estate, hidden behind a wall of stone. She managed to find it, but as she entered the room, she felt a powerful force trying to push her back. Inside, she found an ancient coffin with intricate carvings, a coffin that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. The lid of the coffin was slightly ajar, and as Elena peered inside, she saw an ornate box resting atop a velvet cushion. The box was engraved with symbols similar to those in the diary. Elena reached for it, but as her fingers touched the box, a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice that seemed to come from the shadows themselves. "Are you ready to know the truth?" the voice whispered. Elena's heart raced, and she hesitated, realizing that uncovering the truth might come at a cost. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to writhe with anticipation. The mystery of Vladimir the Eternal was about to unravel, but at what price? The night deepened, and the fog outside thickened. Elena stood at the edge of a precipice, caught between the allure of forbidden knowledge and the ever-present fear of what might be revealed. As she opened the box, a blinding light erupted, and the room was engulfed in an otherworldly glow. When the light faded, Elena was left alone in the darkness, the box empty, and the air heavy with silence. The mysteries of Vladimir and the secrets of the Carpathians remained unsolved, leaving only the chilling reminder that some truths are better left buried. And as the first light of dawn touched the peaks of the Carpathians, the fog began to lift, but the shadow of Vladimir's curse lingered, waiting for the next soul brave or foolish enough to seek the truth. The shadows of the Carpathians. Party Elena stared at the empty box in disbelief, her mind racing with unanswered questions. The ancient symbols on the box seemed to glow faintly, a lingering echo of the light that had filled the room moments before. The air was thick with an ominous silence, broken only by the distant howl of the wind outside. Determined not to leave without further clues, Elena scanned the hidden chamber for any other leads. Her eyes settled on the intricate carvings of the coffin. She traced her fingers over the symbols, feeling a strange connection to them, as if they were calling out to her. Among the carvings, she found a small latch, cleverly concealed within the design. With a hesitant breath, she pressed it. The coffin creaked open, revealing a hidden compartment beneath the velvet cushion. Inside, there was a parchment, aged and brittle, covered in the same cryptic symbols. Elena carefully unfolded it, revealing a map of the Carpathian Mountains, marked with various locations and annotations in an ancient script. As she studied the map, a sense of foreboding washed over her. The annotations seemed to describe places where Vladimir had been sighted over the centuries, each location associated with reports of unexplained phenomena and disappearances. One location stood out among the rest, a remote cave high in the mountains, marked with a symbol that Elena recognized from the diary. With the map in hand, Elena knew her journey was far from over. She needed to find the cave and uncover whatever secrets it held. Gathering her courage, she made her way back to the village to prepare for the treacherous journey ahead. The villagers watched her with wary eyes as she gathered supplies. They whispered among themselves, their unease palpable. An elderly woman, her face etched with lines of worrying, approached Elena. "You should not go to that place, child," she warned, her voice trembling. "The cave is cursed. Those who seek it never return." Elena thanked the woman for her concern but remained resolute. She couldn't turn back now, not when she was so close to uncovering the truth. With her supplies packed and the map carefully tucked away, she set off towards the mountains, the weight of the villagers' warnings heavy on her mind. The journey was arduous, the terrain rugged and unforgiving. As she climbed higher, the air grew colder, and the landscape more desolate. Shadows seemed to move at the edges of her vision, and the howling wind carried whispers that sent chills down her spine. Yet, she pressed on, driven by a mixture of fear and determination. After days of travel, Elena finally reached the entrance of the cave. It was a narrow, foreboding opening, barely visible among the jagged rocks. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside, the darkness swallowing her whole. The air was thick with the scent of earth and decay, and her footsteps echoed ominously. Following the map, Elena navigated the labyrinthine tunnels, her torch casting flickering shadows on the walls. The deeper she went, the stronger the feeling of unease grew, as if the very walls were closing in on her. Finally, she reached a large cavern, its ceiling lost in the darkness above. At the center of the cavern stood an ancient stone altar, covered in dust and cobwebs. On the altar lay another ornate box, similar to the one she had found in the mansion. As she approached, the temperature dropped, and she felt a presence watching her from the shadows. Summoning her courage, she opened the box, revealing a collection of ancient scrolls and a large, blood-red gem. As her fingers brushed the gem, a voice echoed through the cavern, deeper and more sinister than before. "Welcome, seeker of truth," it intoned. "You have come far, but the journey is not yet over. The answers you seek lie within the gem, but beware, the knowledge it holds comes at a great cost." Elena hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She knew that once she looked into the gem, there would be no turning back. The shadows around her seemed to writhe in anticipation, and the whispers grew louder, urging her to proceed. With a resolute heart, Elena picked up the gem and gazed into its depths. The world around her dissolved into darkness, and she was consumed by a vision of blood, betrayal, and ancient curses. She saw Vladimir not as a monster, but as a man cursed by forces beyond his control. forever seeking redemption in a world that had cast him out. When the vision faded, Elena found herself back in the cavern, the gem still in her hand. She now knew the truth of Vladimir's curse, but the knowledge came with a heavy burden. She was bound to the same fate, forever intertwined with the vampire's legacy. As she emerged from the cave, the first light of dawn breaking over the mountains, Elena felt a change within her. The villagers would never understand what she had discovered, nor the sacrifices she had made. The mystery of Vladimir the Eternal was far from over, and Elena's journey had only just begun. The shadows of the Carpathians still held many secrets, and somewhere in the darkness, Vladimir awaited his redemption. The shadows of the Carpathians. Part 3. As Elena descended from the cave, the morning light barely pierced the dense fog that clung to the mountains. Her mind was a whirlwind of newfound knowledge and the haunting vision she had experienced. The gem's weight in her pocket was a constant reminder of the dark secrets she now bore. Returning to Velini, she was greeted with suspicious glares and wary whispers. The village seemed even more somber than before, as if it sensed the darkness she carried. She sought solace in the tavern, hoping a warm meal and a moment of rest would clear her troubled thoughts. That night, Elena's sleep was plagued with nightmares. She dreamed of Vladimir, his sorrowful eyes meeting hers as shadows danced around them. His voice echoed in her mind, a plea for understanding and redemption. But interwoven with his cries were darker whispers, voices of ancient entities demanding vengeance and blood. She woke with a start, the room cold and the feeling of eyes upon her. She glanced around, but the room was empty. Yet, the oppressive presence lingered, pressing down on her chest like a weight. Determined to understand more, she opened the scrolls she had taken from the cave. The ancient script described rituals, curses, and the tragic history of Vladimir's family betrayed by those they had trusted most. As she read, a sudden chill filled the room, and the candles flickered out. The darkness was impenetrable, and in that darkness, she heard a faint, mournful melody, a lullaby sung by a woman's voice. The song grew louder, more insistent, until it filled her mind completely. Elena, a whisper breathed in her ear, and she spun around, heart pounding. There, standing in the corner, was the figure from her nightmares. Vladimir, his eyes filled with sorrow and an unearthly glow, stared at her. "You must finish what you have started. Free me from this torment." Elena's resolve wavered, her fear and determination clashing. "How?" she managed to whisper, her voice trembling. Vladimir extended his hand, pointing to the blood-red gem. "You must complete the ritual. But beware, the cost is great. It binds you to my fate." Before she could respond, the figure vanished, leaving her alone in the suffocating darkness. The oppressive weight on her chest remained, a constant reminder of the curse she had intertwined herself with. Determined, Elena gathered the necessary items and returned to the cave, her steps heavy with dread. The villagers watched her departure with a mix of fear and resignation, their whispers trailing behind her like shadows. Inside the cavern, she approached the altar once more. She placed the gem in the center, arranging the scrolls and other ritual items around it. As she began the incantation, the air grew thick with a dark energy, and the shadows seemed to writhe and pulse. The ground trembled, and a cold wind whipped through the cavern, extinguishing her torch. In the pitch black, the gem began to glow, casting an eerie red light that illuminated the cavern in a haunting glow. The voices grew louder, a cacophony of whispers and screams, as the ritual reached its climax. With a final, desperate cry, Elena completed the incantation. The gem shattered, and a wave of darkness enveloped her. She felt searing pain as the shadows engulfed her, pulling her into their depths. Her last vision was of Vladimir, his face contorted in agony and relief, as he too was consumed by the darkness. The cavern fell silent, the oppressive presence lifting. The gem lay in shards, and the altar was empty. Elena was gone, her sacrifice binding her to the curse for eternity. In Velini, the villagers sensed a change. The shadows no longer seemed to whisper, and the air was lighter. But the legend of Vladimir the Eternal lived on, now intertwined with the tale of the young scholar who sought the truth and paid the ultimate price. And in the deepest shadows of the Carpathians, The spirits of Vladimir and Elena roamed, forever bound by the curse. The village remained haunted by their presence, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left buried. The legacy of Vladimir the Eternal and Elena, the Seeker, continued to cast a long, dark shadow over the land, ensuring that their story was never truly at an end.